Hi, I'm Rob Vanstone. I'm here with Murray McCormick, and from afar in Vancouver, we have with us today as our guest on the Rider Rumblings video podcast, surefire Canadian Football Hall of Famer Paul McCallum, Saskatchewan-roughriders, BC Lions, Scottish Claymores of NFL Europe, and Las Vegas Outlaws of the XFL. And I was communicating with Paul a few weeks ago, kind of going back and forth about a lot of details concerning the collective bargaining agreement, and that kind of morphed into an invitation to Paul to join us this week and talk about that among sundry other matters. So Paul, thank you so much for being with us. It's a real pleasure to have you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
I'm Murray McCormick, by the way.
I thought I introduced you.
I know you missed me.
Oh, okay.
And if you're watching this if you're on your podcast, you're missing the opportunity to see my very favorite Steelers Christmas sweater, Steelers Christmas elf hat, and I looked awesome.
Somebody somewhere is missing a tablecloth. I've got the NFL content with the Denver Broncos hat cap. They're a stellar 6-8, and they haven't fired their coach yet. So anyway.
Did you get that? Did you get that from the Hamilton Tiger Cats locker room?
Yeah,
it does have the same hue, doesn't it?
It does have the same. I grew up as a Tiger Cats fan, so it works.
Paul, there's been so much talk about the CBA. It expires in May, and there's going to be lots of talk before that. From a practical perspective, it'd be better for it to be redone or negotiated in time for free agency in February. But just so many issues emanating from. What are your general thoughts on the CBA and where it stands and where it should stand?
I agree with you. I think for the league as a whole, it'd be nice if they could get it done before training camp. I mean, things just get ugly when it's not done before training camp. And last time I was involved in it, we were in training camp and talking about striking and everything. And the players, they wanted to do everything they could to make things work, and that's why they decided to go to training camp, because they're being optimistic about making something happen. But that being said, after it was signed, the big point of contention is always money, and the teams and the players were told that there's no money, the league is struggling and everything else. And then when the huge TV deal came down, all of a sudden the teams started spending money that they said they never had. So it wasn't very good. But anyway. Here's hoping that they can come to a resolution sooner than later this time around.
Are you optimistic? Oh, sorry, Mer.
What year were you involved in sorry, Paul.
Optimistic. You know what? I am optimistic in the fact that I know that the Players Association is a lot more prepared this time around than they were last. They've got a good team with the executive, and a lot more organized than they were in past. So from the player's standpoint, I think the league knows that, and so hopefully now it's just get down to business and all work for the common goal of playing and just being fair. That's all the players have ever wanted, is just being fair. So the teams know that from the past, and so I think that the players feel like last time they maybe got taken advantage of, but now they're prepared. So the league knows that, so hopefully it'll get hammered out quicker.
I'm thinking in 2014, the Riders were the only team that voted against it. And I remember doing some research that they were unhappy with the money and stuff and that kind of thing.
Yeah, there was a disconnect, I think. Like I said, I don't think that the PA was as organized last time around as they are now, as far as getting the information out well in advance. And it was a bit of a scramble last time. This time, I'm more than certain things will be a lot different.
Because that was Mike Morelli was the president, and he quit just before.
Yeah, they had a big turnover right before the.
I don't want to get into all the details and all the rest of it. I think, legal counsel of 40 years was gone after that as well. There was lots of issues going on, and I think the league knew that. But anyway. That was then, and moving forward, I think Brian Ramsey, Jeff Keepings, and the legal counsel and the special advisors that they've had since then are really on the ball. With is Ken Giorgetti, I believe he's a huge, big labor person out here in Vancouver, he's involved as well. So things are different this time around.
Paul, oh, sorry. How does it work out that it always expires just before training camp? Because I always wondered if the CBA do that, because I looked it back and it said it was May 15th this year. How do you decide on the dates?
Well, I mean, they look at, if you think about it, you do a 2-year or 3-year contract, and it's just unfortunate where it falls. I mean, you're right. It would be smarter if they said, maybe we'll do this, make this an 18-month or a 32-month contract kind of thing, just to change up the timeline so it falls in the off season. That wouldn't be a bad idea. But I think when they rectify it, then it falls again, whether it's 2 or 4 or however many years that you want to do it, same time period.
But I guess the players, and I've said this to Rob, you've got leverage in training camp. You don't have leverage in February. I think that doesn't play a little bit to the players' hands.
Yeah, but you know what? I think from the player standpoint, sure, we have leverage, but at the same time, what kind of damage are we doing? If you look at the hockey and baseball and some of the NFL, who gets hurt in the end is the fans, and the players know that. We take that into consideration, and you don't want to do that. And if you do actually break in training camp and then something happens, well, what kind of product you're putting on the field when you're not going to change the time of the season. So, the players look at that. So, again, that's for the better of the league itself.
What would be fair for the... Sorry, Mark, go ahead.
I'll just ask one more question. Rob and I have talked about, is there a disconnect sometimes between dealing with the Canadian players and the American players? Because the Canadian players, traditionally get paid a little bit better. When you negotiate, do you notice
Canadian starters get paid a little bit better?
Canadian starters get better,
and kickers,
yes. But
sorry,
when
Paul.
You're dealing with the Canadian and the American, is there a division there sometimes? How does that work?
No, it always goes down to is the meetings that I've been into is if you're an American player and you want to have a say, then you've got to get involved. You can't just show up, play, and then leave. So I think things have changed a little bit where, we've got a lot more Americans that are, paying attention and want to be involved to help in that matter. But even so, in saying that, it's not like the Canadians, we don't take the Americans in consideration. Of course we do. I think we've changed some of the medical issues in the off season for Americans as well. We have to look after everybody, and there's lots of issues that we need to address as a players' association for both Canadians and Americans, and just sort of the demographics. Sometimes they play a role, where sometimes you can't do certain things because of the border.
What should the CFLPA look to achieve realistically? Last time there was an incremental increase in the salary cap, I think $50,000 a year or something like that. Pretty minor. What's realistic as far as what they can achieve? To me, it seems like they should be looking for a major bump in the salary cap, and the provision whereby any medical benefits expire after a year. I think there's a real case there to be made where the league could be a lot more more benevolent toward players who are in an unfortunate situation due to an injury incurred during a game.
Yeah, I think so. There needs to be something for that because, the thing that's really scary, people, they don't realize, and then if you tell them, all they say is, well, it was your choice as a player to play or to sign that contract. And one of them is if you are in the last year of your contract, or even if you're not, and at the end of the season, you get injured, your contract ends. You've been paid your 1/18th of your contract, and so now you're not fit to play, obviously. And if you do have an off-season job, depending on the severity of your injury, then you can't work. So there is no insurance. If you come back from the injury at the end of the year to training camp and you're not 100%, well, the team just says, oh, well, you're not fit to play, and they cut you. So you're really, you'll get your treatment, your surgery, and things like that till you're healthy again. But how are you going to survive? You can go to therapy, but that's not putting food on the table. So I think from a medical standpoint, there needs to be something looked at. And I know this has been sort of a point of contention for years, is there is no insurance. I mean, no one's going to touch us. But, what about workers' comp? I think maybe they need to look at something like that. They're always, at the end of the day, it's all money. It doesn't matter whether it's going to be in salary or it's going to be in medical, pension, it's all money and how you divide it up. So when going into negotiations, you can shoot for X amount of dollars, but at the end of the day, it's where you're going to put that money. And that's kind of, in my opinion, where you kind of have to decide, pick your poison, which one, if they're going to give you a little bit, where are you going to agree to put it?
You hit upon that subject where there's no compensation for a guy gets hurt in his job. And people don't grasp that. Because if I get hurt doing my job, I'm covered. And you guys are doing your jobs and you're not covered. I think that's actually ridiculous. And I don't understand how that's been allowed to happen. Jonathan Hefney is the one who's brought it forward with his injuries and whatnot. And I just think, I know the CFL, I hope the CFL wants to step forward and do something addressing this issue, because I think it's really, really ridiculous that a league asks what you guys got to do every day and then doesn't support you when you needed you most.
But then say they're there for the players and they're a family. Well, let's prove it at the bargaining table.
Yeah, no, and I agree. Something simple I always wish I had during my career was dental. We don't even have dental.
Wow.
The only time you're going to get your teeth fixed is if you get them knocked out during practice or a game. So, and guys have families, we've got kids, and as we all know, getting your teeth cleaned and just regular maintenance is expensive.
That's got to be a tough one to sell to your wife. I'm going up to Canada to play football, but I have no benefits, I have no dental, and I'm not going to make a whole lot of money.
In Canadian dollars, and I get paid for half a year.
Half a year.
I know, and it is upsetting because you hear some people saying, well, that's what you knew what you were signing, you got into it. Well, it still doesn't make it right. There's labor laws in place in this day and age for reasons of, people getting taken advantage of. You got to start somewhere. If somebody wants to try and make a career at playing in the NFL or make a career living in playing the CFL, you got to start somewhere, and you usually start by not making a lot of money. When I started, I think I made like $22,000. Right. Wow. That was for the season, not like for half of it. That was the whole season.
18 times, yeah. Split up.
How did Vince McMahon pay?
Yeah.
Well, put it this way: Vince McMahon paid similar, but the thing that was really good about that is you were 100% covered for everything.
Really?
Wow. Medical, dental. I mean, my wife at the time could have come down and we could have had our baby in Las Vegas. Like, everything was covered. I mean, I'd spoken to the medical department with the WWF at the time and was asking, and the lady, I remember saying, son, don't worry about it. This is the best medical benefit package that there is, that exists, that she knew of. So, and that goes a long way.
Too bad it didn't last more than a year. You probably didn't have a claim.
Well, there's another story to that. Was I actually wasn't coming back to Saskatchewan because of what was going on down there. I was offered an off-season job because the Riders weren't going to allow me to go back again in the off-season. So the club down there was going to hire me in the off-season to do promotion and marketing for the team. And then the following year, the salaries were apparently supposed to more than double. So, yeah.
Do you like its chances now it's being revived? And how's your leg?
Yeah, no kidding. I think they've learned their mistakes the first time around. And it's not going to be a hocus-pocus wrestling endeavor with the commentators and such. And it's the States. People love football. They do. So I'm not sure, because I think there's 3 leagues starting. So I'm not sure what's going to happen. But I can say the players that are coming to Canada playing for $50,000, they're not going to come. Why would they?
With these leagues sprouting up, does that give the CFLPA some leverage in negotiations, in that you've got to make it a sweeter, even a beginner wage now and a beginner package for players in order to compete with these other leagues? Does that that very timely from the CFL PA's point of view? Because it would be in the league's best interest now too to be as enticing as it can be from a player standpoint.
Yeah, I think that the league's and the general managers are gonna have to be smarter with their signings. When you go and you sign a player and you give them a decent salary, you got to own up to it and keep them, because when players have options like they're going to have, if you don't treat them right, they're gone. So I think that whole old analogy of, well, here's 55,000 or whatever it may be, take it or leave it, when their statistics or stats were better than somebody else somewhere else, who never had the same stats, making way more money. That player's going to say, well, these are the players that I'm comparing myself to and where I should sort of sit in the salary. And, if the team that you're negotiating with is lowballing you, well, they're going to go. They got more options. Can't do that anymore.
No. Can I ask a football question? Real one. Okay, Riders have Tyler Crapena and Brett Lowther under contract. Crapena, sorry. Haven't used his name since summer. Which one should they keep? What do you think?
You know what? It's a good problem to have if you're the Riders. And the way I look at it is, you take them to training camp and may the best man win. Because I would say that the way Brett played last year, I would say that unfortunately it should be his job to lose. Because I believe, how many games did he play? Was it 17 or 16?
He missed one, I think.
So 17 games. So because Carpena, did he blow his knee?
Lowther played every game.
No, Lowther played every game. Carpena
played one preseason game,
and he had hip surgery.
So he had hip surgery. Okay, so I mean, you don't know how he's going to come off of that either, right? And I don't know. He did well when he was playing, but at the same time, does Brett have a stronger leg for kickoffs?
Way better.
Well, I mean, you're playing in Saskatchewan. You need a strong leg to get through the wind. I mean, it's just a fact. So the way I look at it is, you bring him to camp and have a competition. I've always been a firm believer in, you've always got to compete. It's a job to lose for Brett, I would say, but at the same time, if Carpena can come in and beat him, then there you go. But what's wrong with competition?
Plus, he's got an 86.4% career accuracy rate, that being Carpena. So if it doesn't work out here, there's going to be some teams interested in. And
Lowther's only 90%.
He could probably make the extra points for the New York Jets that they failed to make this past weekend.
Or the Steelers.
It's funny you say that. I think to myself, is he under contract with the Riders right now?
Yeah, 1 more year.
1 more year. Well, I mean, he's Canadian, right? Not American.
Right.
But if he goes and has another good year, why wouldn't he get a shot in the States? There's lots of kickers down there that aren't as good as some of the ones up here.
Man, that would be the story from the guy who waited in the wings and waited for his chance and got cut and released and finally gets his opportunity and goes to the States. That'd be a good story. I'd like to write that one.
It's no different than Lewis Ward. I mean, he was security guard, and now all of a sudden he goes out and has the best season of all time. So, that's amazing that he did that. But, now he's got to do it again.
What are the differences between kicking in American football and Canadian?
Honestly, I think it's easier to kick in the States. Everything's right in front of the goalposts. Mm-hmm. Most of the stadiums are bowls. Most of the stadiums are bowls, meaning that they're below, ground level, and they're completely surrounded. The only stadium I ever kicked in that I was like, okay, this is difficult, was Soldier Field. But other than that, they were all, you're right in front of the goalposts. And unfortunately, I have to admit this, but they spend a lot more time on field goals and kicking. The snappers are a lot more refined. It's more precise. The snaps and the holds, they're expected to be, perfect on the laces and the time for getting the ball off. So as a kicker, I felt it was easier to kick down there.
Is the football any different?
Pardon me?
Is the football any different? Like the football itself as opposed to the style of football?
A little bit. It feels when you hit it, it's got a little more bounce to it than the CFL ball. The comparison would be you're kicking a cold ball instead of a hot ball. It's got a little bit more bounce to it.
Not this past weekend, but the one before, Brett Maher, another good Canadian, kicked a 62-yard field goal for the Dallas Cowboys. Paul, what's it like to kick a 62-yard field goal?
Yeah, it's fun. I'll be honest. Did he kick one? I didn't see it.
He did. 62 yards. Pressure kick too.
Did you say 60 or 50?
62.
62.
How does that number sit with you?
Yeah, that's
Well, yours was closer to 63, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think they're counting as a 63. But what I was gonna say is, Brett, is he not American?
I think he is American.
Is he American?
I think he is.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, he's American.
He just played in the CFL.
Okay, I stand corrected.
First time. Anyway, that's kind of.
What do you make of this football operations cap that the CFL has imposed, Paul? Getting back to the nitty gritty of negotiations, I wonder if it's a beneficial thing in one hand, and that the league is finally serious about controlling those kind of salaries, or if it's going to be detrimental to the lot of the players, in that it's just going to be a drag on the potential increases in player compensation, because the league will be able to say, well, we put a lid on this pot, now we need to put a lid on the other pot. Which way do you see that landing?
No, I'll be honest. I've been advocating for that for years, because to me, who comes to watch the games to watch the general manager or the head coach? Nobody. And
Mrs. Huffnagel.
Pardon me?
Mrs. Huffnagel.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. When you have you have a general manager, head coach making 99% more money than your superstar player, who people are coming to watch, buying jerseys that, the player, you're talking about quarterbacks that are, helping you win games. It's always bothered me. I don't know of many other leagues where the head coach, general manager, is making more than 99% of the players. So with that being said, you've got that huge discrepancy between, a general manager, a head coach. You've also got presidents. They're up there. Some of them are making more than $500,000. And then, you've got offensive coordinators that might be making $150,000. So it just doesn't make any sense. And so then how can you, I think Brandon Tammon said it, he said it was ironic. He said he agreed that there's a huge discrepancy, and he would hate to have to walk up to one of the support staff and say, well, yeah, I'm sorry, we have to cut you. You're making your $50,000 or whatever it may be, but at the same time, he's making $300,000-$400,000. So to put it in perspective, if they're going to cap that, I think that in a team sport, in a team environment, maybe that money's going to have to be spread around to be successful, instead of having it being so top heavy and just cutting jobs at the bottom because there's such a pay discrepancy.
And it sounds like not just to players either, like spread the money around, because.
No, I'm talking about the business. I'm not even talking about. I'm not even talking about it. I mean, to be quite honest with you, when I first started in the league, I would go and kick field goals and have to go get the balls myself. I mean, there was hardly any people, the support staff, besides the equipment manager and maybe a ball boy. But when you got 46 guys or 44 guys, first of all, the kicker's, the last on the totem pole to be getting the help. But you got so many people that need stuff. And for years, everything's been, people want to be around the team, so they'll volunteer, they'll do it for nothing. But after a while, it gets old, and it's like, well, these people are working and they're helping the club. they're there for 6 months of the year. They're coming in and they're helping at training camp, and it just the money that's sitting at the top end when there needs to be more money at the bottom end, because when you're helping the players, making the players looking after them and everything else, making things more comfortable, then it makes a difference. And I'll be honest, my last year when I came to Saskatchewan, there was more than enough people to help. Go back to Vancouver, not so much. So where's the money being spent? So now if there's a cap, the top end people, maybe they shouldn't be making as much, because that's not what wins football games. That's not what puts people in the seats. I mean, would you say, Rob, that in the late 80s, early 90s is when the league was, the attendance was way up?
It's always had its challenges.
Oh, no, it's always had its challenge, but I mean, I always, like I'd say about 87, 88, when I wasn't even playing, I always remember hearing about the Lions having like 40,000 people at BC Place.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, I can tell you right now, when I started in the 90s, the business office upstairs that were selling tickets, the sales departments, they never had half of the people that they have now, and the attendance is down. So to me, I wonder, are all those extra people upstairs putting fans in the seats, which they're not even there, right? To me, in the CFL, winning exciting football games and whatnot is what puts people in the seats.
And kickers.
Not having 40 business people.
But then you add on the president, CEOs, and the other titles that teams seem to be inventing, and none of those people are working inexpensively either. It seems like they've been adding more layers and supporting those layers rather generously over the years, and that money should be going to the players. You get the situations where coaches get fired and they end up being paid off, and general managers get fired, they end up being paid off. The players aren't fortunate in that regard either. So it's really time for the pendulum to swing, and with this new cap, hopefully putting a check on some of those other salaries, with hopefully a huge increase in the new cap, maybe we'll get closer to some sort of equilibrium, because I don't think that situation exists now. That's my speech for the day.
But from a player standpoint, if you think about it, the last CBA, I think, was signed, and I think that's when it's the same year when oh my goodness, my timing right here. I came to Saskatchewan. Was it the year after, I believe?
Yeah, 2015.
And you just had re-signed Brendan. You had just re-signed Coach Chamberlain. Guaranteed contracts. I think the offensive coordinator had a guaranteed contract. And, you go and you hire a new general manager, head coach, giving them, nobody knows exactly, but the word has it was over $500,000. But you still got to pay out all these other coaches for a couple of years. Then you get rid of the OC. So you think how much money that one transaction just cost the club, plus signing all the other players and all the coaches, assistant coaches, and the players are sitting and going, we just signed a deal last year because we were told that all the teams don't have money, they're struggling and everything else, and the club just goes and does all of that. So it's we were always told, well, you can't tell an owner or a community how to run their business. I get it. Well, at the same time, don't sit there and tell the players that you got no money either.
Well, look at the Argonauts right now. They're in a tough situation financially. We'll never know what that situation is because it's a privately owned team, but their crowds would dictate that they're having a financial bath every year. Yet they have enough money to pay off Mark Trestman, and that contract said to be well over $500,000.
That's what I was just going to say. I'm not picking on the Riders, but you've got one of the other teams like Toronto that said they had no money, and then they go and sign somebody like Trestman. So how can you say, well, sorry, we can't afford to pay the players? And don't get me wrong, coaches are good. You need to have a good coach and all, but are you trying to tell me that Trestman is the only American coach? Right? So the old analogy that I was given is, here's your contract, this is what we're paying you. If you don't like it, don't worry, there's a lineup behind you of guys that will play for that and less. Irreplaceable. No one's irreplaceable.
Wow. That makes you feel warm and fuzzy, eh? Yeah. That sounds like a Wally. It's like Wally negotiating.
Well, no, actually, I'd say it started my last year in Saskatchewan, the year before, the year I left unwantingly.
Yeah.
but and so I think that the general managers, the presidents, I think with this new budget, I think it's a good thing, and I think that it's going to make the business decisions have to be a lot more thought out, planned out, and I think it'll be good.
What do you think of the
final
hiring?
thoughts?
Oh, sorry.
We're almost done here.
I was just going to throw, what do you think of the Devon Claybrooks hiring? Kind of going from a polar opposites of coaches, I think.
You know what? I think you can't judge a book by its cover. Like, I mean, everyone says, oh, his hat's on sideways and, everything else. But I learned a long time ago, when you're playing and you see another player on a different team and you kind of don't like him or his attitude and all the rest, you don't know. So I don't know him, but I think that he, like you said, he's learned from and got mentorship from some other good coaches. And I think it's a good idea to bring in some young new coaches and see where they go. I think his statistics for his defense have spoken for themselves. So I'm looking forward to see how he does.
Paul, what are you doing these days? What should the people of Saskatchewan and Rider Nation know about?
I'm still in Vancouver. Doing real estate and working for a data analytics company as well. But staying busy, and it's sure is different than playing, I tell you.
I'll bet.
I guess if I can throw my final thoughts out there, I guess on behalf of all the Riders podcast, Merry Christmas to everyone. Rob, Paul, all the people that are watching and listening to us. And we're off for a couple weeks. And we'll be back in the new year, refreshed and re-energized and whatever.
Yeah, Paul, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real treat to have you with us and braving some technological glitches as we still wait our way through the logistics of this process. Thanks so much, Paul.
No worries, guys. Thanks for having me.
So for Murray McCormick, for Paul McCallum from snowless land far away, I'm Rob Vanstone. Before we sign off, I am contractually obligated to read this. Please rate us on iTunes and leave a review. It helps us grow the podcast. And we're hoping not to grow the podcasters any more than we already have. So for Murray, Paul, I'm Rob. Thank you so much. Merry Christmas, and we'll be back in January. Take care.